Hi, yes, appreciate your patience. I see someone's asking in the chat whether it's going to start soon, and we're starting now. So welcome, everyone, to join another very exciting webinar from Bitsight. I always love you when that you're starting to put your location and hello in the chat, so appreciate that. Before we start, I have a couple of things. As if you joined us before, you would know that a couple of housekeeping items for you to make sure that you make the most out of this webinar as well as the follow-up. First of all, I want to introduce myself really quickly. My name is Chong. Really nice to meet you. I'm a senior product marketing manager from Bitsight. Really excited to be here today. A couple of things. So I see that many of you have already leveraged it. So on the right side of your window, there are 3 tabs. The first tab is chat, which you're using, which is awesome. Please keep sending a note on where you're from, because we would love to see. The second tab is docs. So those are free resources for you to leverage all the good stuff that are relevant to our topic today. And then lastly, I would point out the Q&A tab. So this is where you can submit your questions, things you want to clarify or take a deeper dive with the speaker throughout the webinar. So please do use that, because we will address your questions in the end of the webinar. We'll make sure to get to that. This webinar is recorded, as always, so don't feel like you have to take notes. We hope you can take the most out of it. We will send the recording link after the webinar, so you'll have it. What else? Oh, there's one new thing. So on the top of your window, if you see there's a button in orange called Talk to a Bitsight Expert. This is a really quick thing that can connect you with a real person that can help you really dive into some of the sort of solution that's tailored to your questions. We're in a time of AI, and a lot of things are automated. So sometimes it's really good to talk to a person and get your problem solved really quick. Yeah, it's a one click and you get personalized demo and session. So it's awesome stuff. I think that's all we need to know to make the most out of our webinar today. Let's move on. I would like to introduce, really excitingly, the speakers that are joining me today. First, we have Evan Tagoff. So Evan is an information security professional, currently serving as the Vice President of the Solutions Engineering at Bitsight. Evan has over 23 years of experience in the cybersecurity industry. That's awesome. Evan helps organizations historically consider cybersecurity, data protection, technology, and business risk as a unified concept. Evan will share much more on this, but really quick, I think it's pretty cool that Evan does hundreds of workshops with TPRM folks every year. So really like in the front line of like helping folks addressing their problems. So yeah, what else? Prior to Bitsight, Evan developed third-party risk programs for a lot of large organizations. So through his work with Optiv, Accuvant, and Forthy Technologies, and he has lead consulting teams focused on third-party risk assessments, compliance, and risk management. Evan holds CC certification and is certified third-party risk professionals, and was previously ISO 27001 assessor and PCI QSA. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you, Chang-Lu.
And next we have Emma Stevens. So Emma is a threat intelligence researcher at Bitsight with over 10 years of experience in cyber threat intelligence and dark web analysis. Works closely with SOC team. Emma specializes in tracking threat actors and their tactics to help organizations stay ahead of evolving cyber risk. She's the valedictorian of the Cyber Advanced Search Operator certification and holds a commercial signature reduction credential, reflecting her advanced expertise in intelligence operations. Beyond research, Emma is passionate about educating companies and individuals on cyber threats and brings a global perspective. Emma's a fun fact. Emma is fluent in Spanish, French, and Arabic. I would say cyber threat, if it's another language, probably 4. So welcome, Emma. Alrighty, just to really quick give you a sense of how we would use our time today. We'll cover a couple of things. So we'll start with the broader resilience mandate. This is something you've probably been hearing about, and if not, very soon. What is the traditional approaches to third-party risk management, and what are the shifts that we're seeing? So the current states and how it's evolving from here. From there, we'll shift into why threat actor context matters. This is where we move beyond static risk signals and start thinking about how attackers actually behave today. One thing I would call out is we're super aware that this is our audience today is, a combine of TBRM folks and GRC teams. So we'll really want to make sure that this is tailored for you. Then we'll bring together by looking at how to integrate intelligence into GRC workflows, which is a very timely topic, in a way that's practical and actionable for you. We will make sure we have time for Q&A. So again, make sure you send your questions on the tab of Q&A. And I will take a few quick minutes to set up Seeing Furthermore before I hand over to Evan. So we're talking about the new the mandate for CISOs. This really is about, the role for CISO has been involved based on the things that we've been hearing from our customers, as well as some of the analyst relations conversation we've been having. This is the common theme. It's no longer just about, preventing every possible events or incidents. It's about if an incident happened, can you recover fast? Can you identify the problem, take actions, and recover fast? You'll hear a lot of this year about resilience, which introduce a new set of questions. Things like, are our controls really reducing risk? How do we manage exposure that sits outside our direct control? Because sometimes it's not directly within our purview or ownership, especially across third parties, right? That's where things start to get a little bit tricky. Customer has been telling us, and this is a challenge of today, is that the ownership of this, the resiliency or the evolution of resiliency, is not always clear within the organization. On the one side, you have security operations focus on threats and incidents. On the other hand, you have GRC teams focus on governance and compliance, which are you folks. And often the two teams work from, completely different data sets and priorities. So while both teams are trying to solve the same problem on a larger scope, they're effectively speaking different languages. And this kind of lack of alignment becomes a real barrier when you're trying to manage risk across a complex vendor ecosystem. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But just to double click on that, make this a little bit more concrete to you, right? Just rather than staying on the theoretical level. If we're talking about a different set of languages, on the SecOps side, we have threat actors, TTPs, campaigns, indicators, techniques, things that Emma's super fluent to, and maybe your peer CTI and SOC team are super fluent to. On the other side, what we are speaking really or thinking about every day is vendors, tiers, contracts, compliance requirements, and things like that. So both perspectives are super valid. It's just a question of whether they're naturally connected. When a real threat emerges, you think about it, it's not always clear how to translate those things into which vendors are impacted, what actions should be taken, and who needs to be involved within the organization. There's many stakeholders on those things, and time is pressing, super urgent. So who should I get involved? And that's where things start to delay if we don't have those questions clearly answered and ready to use. So this disconnect is one of the core reasons that organizations struggle to operationalize third-party risk in a meaningful way. And that's what we like to focus on today, is to close that gap, right? And create a shared language between those teams, make it a big part of how the two teams collaborate. And I'm going to soon head over to Evan, but before that, again, things I'll refer to over and over today is we want to make sure that this resonates with you and is tailored to your use case. So before that, we would like to get a sense of how you think or feel about the TPRM program priorities. So if we can pull up the live poll, we would like to get your thoughts on this. What is the biggest shift in your TPRM program from 2025 to 2026? You have a couple of options: moving from assessments to continuous monitoring. This is a theme we keep hearing today, this year, is that focus on, moving away from the static and going to continuous monitoring. Is it a greater focus on real-time threat intelligence? Is it about stronger alignment between, SOC and GRC? Is it more, coming sort of expectation or pressure even coming from the executives and say, how can we build a program that's more resilient? Or it's totally okay to say, I haven't seen any major change yet. I'm doing what we're doing and just trying to do it better. As we see the votes come in, Evan, Emma, is there anything you want to comment on? I think I'm going to hand over from here. Feel free to take it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So no surprise to me, the top item here, moving from assessments to continuous monitoring, that's been a core theme, I think, for third-party risk for a while, is just the advancing maturity. And today we're going to be talking about some things that I think even address an additional advancing maturity, highly aligned with continuous monitoring, not exclusively to it, but thank you. People are continuing to add that their input on there. And I'll say, just before we get to the next slide, it was interesting to listen to Chonglu's opening there with SecOps and GRC, because you can kind of look at Emma and I as representing these different areas as well. If you were listening to the background, I have a lot of GRC background, risk and compliance, a lot of those different areas. So I've been really thrilled to be able to workshop with a lot of our clients, because I'm very interested in the state of TPRM programs, et cetera. Emma is a subject matter expert, so she's going to drop in, talk all about, CTI context. We'll talk about threat actors. We'll talk about a lot of things. And these, I'm hoping you're going to see how these things are coming together, because that's really what we want to, what we're hoping really the program maturities will kind of move toward this. And of course, Bitsight is offering a lot of data and underlying, I think, value in this area. And so we'll talk about that in a bit. But just to continue this theme of, what we see in the market today and where it's going from our perspective, is we do these workshops. We've done over 300 of them, and I've had the pleasure of participating myself in hundreds of them. Key themes have been coming out of them, and we think 4 of them are worthy of highlighting. One is that almost all third-party risk teams feel like assessments are not enough. And this is partly the fact that assessments are point in time, and partly based upon the fact that today assessments is evolving. Even the thought of assessing a vendor, it can be frustrating, though. Vendors don't respond, they can't be validated. And really, I think we're seeing a shift from that assessment piece to being much more balanced, to being that continuous monitoring is as important, if not more important, than the point-in-time assessment. The internal collaboration, this is part and parcel of this dialogue we've been talking about. SOC teams, the GRC risk teams, tends to be that in third-party risk that belongs on the GRC side. SOC team tends to be in security engineering, SOC, threat intelligence. More and more they need to talk together. And as we talk about, threat intelligence and how it fits into TPRM, hopefully that'll be highlighted even more why continued collaboration there is really critical, we think. Monitoring today is an evolving state today. So a lot of what I see in monitoring, so when even the initial poll saying we're moving from this state of assessment into monitoring, I think we even need to start to think about advancing and maturing what monitoring is, because where monitoring is taking effect today, what I would ask you maybe to think about in your own program is it mostly reactive monitoring? Are you looking at signals to say if something happens, are we reacting to it? As we start to think about threat intel, we're hoping that we can lead the discussion, lead the perspective, within third-party risk, that can we understand from this threat context things that will make us maybe a little more predictive or get ahead of things, because this exploding extended surface that is the third party or the supply chain is where most of this is happening, and I think a change in perspective is necessary. And then the last point here is that all vendors treated the same. So many organizations are tiering their vendors to some extent, critical, non-critical, and maybe some multi-tier level there. That's to try to avoid this one size fits all. But what we don't see as much, hoping this will be a trend that we can help to lead to, is to consider the threat context as part of that, because your vendors will become an important, think vendor, service provider, cloud provider, will become an unfortunate linchpin sometimes in cyber attacks, incidents, other things like that. And to understand that threat context that either leads to that, understand the threat actors behind it, as well as other kind of nuances of threat intelligence is really important. And so that's really where we're going to be heading. I'm going to turn it over to Emma now, but where I see the points to kind of pepper in my perspective, I will as well. But Emma, you've written a couple of really great blogs. I would recommend everyone check out your blogs. I read them every time they come out, and I know you have some interesting things to say about this. So Emma.
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about why threat actor context matters, the different kinds of threat actors, and which ones you need to watch out for your vendors. Something I hear often is, I'm not targeted often. And just because you're not targeted often doesn't mean your vendors aren't targeted. Threat actors are going to go after vendors and companies that they think are going to be most likely to pay the ransom, or they're most likely to get the biggest reaction from. So telecom vendors, manufacturing vendors, healthcare vendors are all going to be big targets, because threat actors know they're more likely to either get the ransom paid or get a big reaction and gain more notoriety. One thing I liken this to is if you are a physical security officer and you're watching your cameras, and your cameras only update every 5 or 10 minutes, so you're only getting still images. How do you know if someone's trying to break in right now? How do you know if there's not an active threat? If you can't see it, it's a lot harder to track, other than just walking around and trying to track all of it by yourself. So having continuous live feed is going to really be helpful and change your threat intelligence to make sure that you're actively seeing, hey, I saw that Akira is targeting one of my telecom vendors. I heard them talking about this vendor. Now I can go alert this vendor and be like, hey, did you know that Akira is talking about you? Did you know that these are associated indicators of compromise with Akira? One big thing for threat intelligence is we are all one team. It's us against these ransomware and malware attacks. So making sure that you're communicating, that you're checking in with your vendor, you're saying, hey, did you hear about this major CVE that's happening? Or do you use this tool that has recently been breached?
Yeah, and I think it's, from the TPRM perspective, what I hear a lot too is not only does it come down from the board, is this vulnerability or this incident or this, campaign directed by an Akira, affecting us, but is it affecting our third party? So it's almost like in one breath, what is our attack surface? What's our extended attack surface? So absolutely.
Yeah. One thing with Akira that has proven time and time again that threat actors are scrappy and they will change on a dime. Akira attempted to hack into a company. They got detected by the endpoint detection response, and then they pivoted and hacked in through an unsecured webcam. Most people aren't thinking about their Bluetooth devices that are connected to their their laptops, their keyboards, their webcams. So it just shows you how quickly attackers can change their tactics, techniques, and procedures, which is what we are going to talk about next. So attackers are not static. They are consistently changing, either based on geopolitical relations. We've seen what's going on in the world right now. So different attackers are either more active because of the current geopolitical climate, or are changing their TTPs based on that. There are attackers that will attack based on companies that are more likely to pay the ransom. Where am I going to get the largest financial payout? We have seen a decline in companies actually paying the ransom. So now these threat groups are saying, okay, companies aren't paying the ransom as much. Who can I go for that has no choice but to pay the ransom, because the legal effects, if they were to get breached, are going to be way more expensive or way more catastrophic than if they just were to pay the ransom. So they're looking at your vendors, the ones that have access to your information that they can easily get if they get into your vendor's environment. They're looking at groups that are just saying, hey, I'm not associated with anyone, but I am a hacktivist and I'm hacking on behalf of this country because I've decided that I align with this political ideology. So if you don't know, there's APTs, which are typically nation-backed, so they are government-backed. There's hacktivists, which are not government-backed, but generally hack for political reasons. And then there's just the regular old ransomware gangs that are generally financially motivated. So knowing the different motivations of these groups, how they're changing based on the current political, financial climates, is going to help you track, okay, so this group play is going after manufacturing vendors. What can I do to make sure my manufacturing vendor is safe? What conversations can I be having to make sure that they are also tracking these TTPs and seeing, hey, have I heard your name mentioned on the dark web? Have I heard any chatter about going after you? So like I said, adversaries are constantly changing tactics, changing their tools, changing who they're going after, and looking for the biggest disruption, which is typically going after a vendor, because it's going to have a sort of domino effect.
Yeah, and just a quick point on that business impact. So over the years, what I've seen in third-party risk is everyone is always thinking about their vendors in terms of data being shared, which is a typical compliance perspective on it. But more and more, this business impact has become huge for third-party risk teams to think about that downstream disruption. Because, like you said, Emma, if an adversary decides to take out a linchpin service, it's going to have an outsized effect, and it's going to have a business impact across supply chains.
Yep, absolutely. I've seen a few questions come in, one about cyber insurance. It really depends on your insurance plan and how much coverage you have in terms of if your vendor gets breached, how protected are you through your insurance provider. But yes, tracking this chatter, tracking about who's talking about like, hey, I am going after this group. A lot of these threat actors have Telegram channels, invite-only dark web channels that we are part of, that we are tracking to see like, hey, they've discussed going after X company, because they have to coordinate somehow. So having that third-party intelligence and the dark web intelligence will help you be more informed on potential attacks like the Aquasec attack. Okay, so there was an Oracle vulnerability in the e-business suite for Oracle. The CVE was first flagged on October 4th, but researchers were reporting that the CVE had likely been exposed since August. So that's a pretty big time frame where attackers were exploiting the CVE, and either they're in the network and people just, SOC teams and CTI teams just aren't aware, they haven't been flagged that they're in the network, or they're just, like I said, collecting information on you or continuing to exploit the CV. We saw this happen with the MoveIt CV that was breached by Clop. So big tools like these, tools that a lot of different companies use, are going to be high targets for threat actors, because they know they can inflict maximum damage if they're to get into one of these tools. And then again, on October 11th, a new CVE related to Oracle e-business suite came out, again, showing just how much threat actors were persistently targeting Oracle because they were getting results that they were happy with. Threat actors never work a 9 to 5. They like to stop attacking you for 2 weeks and then come back and attack you later. So making sure that your vendors are prepared if you've seen that they've been targeted by Akira. Are they prepared to know that Akira is going to stop for a week and then come back a week later? Are they loosening any security controls? What is the vendor doing to help protect you and make sure none of your valuable data gets leaked, or any of your data, really?
Yep. So we'll come back to this one too. So when we lean back into the areas that we think Bitsight can kind of help, and think from this resilience mindset about events like this happening. We're not in any way picking on Oracle. They're just a major supply chain partner for so many organizations, and this will be something we come back to when we talk about some of the dark web resources that we provide at Bitsight. So if you're done with this portion, I'll forward the slides. Did you have any other comments on this, Emma, or are we ready to move on?
Ready to move on.
Okay, excellent. So just to bring back the context here to kind of the TPRM team. So this slide is titled, what are most TPRMs may be doing today? Because it's while we have workshopped with a number of organizations, there's a lot of uniquenesses in programs. So if you look at this and you're a third-party risk program and say, oh, we're not doing this, that could be because there's certain practices in place. What we see a lot, though, obviously, as Bitsight, we're a provider of cyber risk intelligence data. Part of that is ratings. The Bitsight mission has really shifted over the years to provide a lot of data beyond cyber ratings, but they're still central to a lot of TPRM teams. So we see a lot of TPRM teams using Bitsight cyber ratings, setting those up for alerts. So you see a posture change in your third-party environment, get alerted. And then we've always been very careful with our breach research team about identifying publicly disclosed breach notifications using Freedom of Information Act requests, as well as other sources of validation. The plus on that side is that that they're publicly disclosed and validated. The downside, though, is it's always after the fact. And really what we're trying to get to with cyber threat intelligence is to give you intelligence before the fact to be able to anticipate things within your supply chain. So that's a major area of movement for Bitsight, because the last box over here, reaching out to third parties after major supply chain incidents, we want to be able to get to a point to give you anticipatory data. I was talking with a third-party risk leader at the Shared Assessment Show last week, and he was mentioning how he would like to even have his team be a provider of data to his third parties rather than be an auditor and a punitive if you don't complete your questionnaire and do all those things, but provide data. And I think this type of threat intelligence data and other data that we can provide, think about that in terms of what you could provide to really raise the bar for the supply chain itself, because this kind of data is something that all teams need. I think this is a place for a poll, if I'm right, Chung Nilafar. We're going to put another poll out. Yeah, okay. So this poll is really, if you think about, we talked about challenges at the beginning of this. We'd really like to hear what your challenges are, so that we always want to keep our finger on the pulse. So what is your biggest challenge today? Cyber risk. Jump in, vote, please. Looks good. Now we're getting some responses here. Interesting. Prioritizing vendors, still an issue. Interesting that getting GRC and security teams aligned is not getting any votes. I'll interpret this maybe. There's a couple ways you could interpret this. On one hand, you could say, oh, there's a vote or two for it. But anyway, on one hand, I think you could say, well, maybe this means they are aligned. That would be great. But I think another interpretation could be, well, we haven't really thought that much yet about aligning these two teams. Because if you think about, you're listening to me, you're listening to Emma, you're probably hearing two different things, that we have different perspectives, right? So, to get those two together, I think is really an emerging area, and you can see it's staying with a relatively low vote. So very interesting. We're going to keep leaning in on that, but we really do think those teams need to work more and more together, so that threat intel can be analyzed appropriately. And at Bitsight's mission, we're really trying to give that right level of data to those GRC and TPRM teams.
Yeah, and prioritizing vendor risks can be hard. One of the things that we help with is knowing which threat actor is talking about which vendors or which vendor industries. And is this a big threat actor? Is it one of the current most active threat actors? With the light LLM breach that happened yesterday, we put that Team PCP was 300% more active than other similar threat actors. So we're going to give you that statistics on how active is this threat actor. Is it a low-level script kiddie who doesn't necessarily have the skills to actually pull this hack off? Or is it one of the big groups like Cyber Avengers or Akira or Play or Killian? Are those the ones that are talking about my vendors? Or are those the ones that I need to be more aware of and act on quickly?
Yeah, I thought an interesting nuance of your blog about threat actor context. And I think we can take the poll off. We can move back to the slides if you're ready, Changlu or Nilüfer. Okay. I thought one interesting take from your blog as I reread it was the nuance in the threat actors is that you can't just pigeonhole them. I actually tend to do it too. I think about, oh, this threat actor has always done secure file transfer systems, et cetera. She made an excellent point there, but it also kind of says that, so as we're going to move into this next section about how we can take threat intel and build it into TPRM, no one here is saying it's easy. I was thinking, okay, you have analysts here at the threat intel side who need to analyze it. Now we're really asking the GRC and TPRM teams to consider it too. So we're not saying it's easy. It's not just like, oh, Akira has done this and they're always going to do this. That's not the case. So we're definitely understand it's hard.
Sorry, Scattered Spider, known for SIM swapping and targeting telecom vendors, and then they were behind the MGM attacks. Like Evan said, they tend to switch around based off where the most impact and money is for them.
Yeah. But then they are still, interestingly, still quite organized. That's the other thing that always interests me about the space, right? It's like it's sort of like a business. It's like crime. It's sort of like organized crime. Anyway. So to kind of talk a little bit more about threat intelligence in GRC or in third-party risk. So when I say GRC and third-party risk, I'm being a little interchangeable here, just so everyone is kind of following. GRC, maybe think of it as the mindset, third-party risk as being the team and the approach. So what we're hearing a fair amount, when we talk about threat intelligence into GRC is that almost entirely positive responses to the thought that Bitsight is going to bring a lot of threat intel to this, but also a little bit of hesitancy. It's like, okay, I know we need this, but we really just want the relevant stuff. And we don't want to have so many more signals that we can't action on, especially from the GRC side. This is true of all, but think about threat intel and this extended attack surface and how much bigger and how many more signals are going to come. So we are aware of these teams being like, well, okay, we need to have adequate signals. And then how do I really prioritize them? And I'm starting to get some questions too, where you would alert on traditional things in Bitsight. Now you have all these other threat intel pieces. How do we alert on that, boil it down, et cetera? Because the GRC TPRM teams tend to think along compliance lines, and there's nothing really wrong about that. I mean, I've been a compliance person too, but this is, this is sort of a call to expand your thinking beyond that as well, to put things on top of that compliance mindset that would inform you, through threat intel across looking at your supply chain and your third parties. So we are launching really a suite of features and data within our TPRM platform. We're calling it Dark Web Intelligence for Supply Chain. And what we're really trying to do is bring this threat intel to play for GRC and TPRM teams. We're breaking it down into kind of three major areas of what we're trying to provide. And this is an evolving approach for us as well. So we really love to hear from our customers about that we're heading in the right direction. But essentially, first is like what could happen. We're going to be providing, tailored threat intel feeds. We have something called Pulse. We're going to be providing sectoral intelligence. And then, what is happening? We just launched a product called Breach Intelligence. We'll dig in a little bit in a second about what this is. I consider this kind of the flagship of our stage one of launching threat intel into TPRM. And then the where to prioritize. So this is starting to answer the question. This will be over time. We're going to have to get better and better at this. This helps with that sort of concern on the GRC side. If we're going to get more, how do we decide which of the things we actually need to action on across a supply chain that is probably very, very vast? So what are these things? So we were thinking about, demoing versus this. So think of this as kind of a non-live demo. Everything you see here is in the platform, but to make sure we hit time, we just wanted to kind of go through them, get the point across. What I'd suggest is if you like this perspective, let's talk, and we can have, a session with you dedicated to go through all of these elements. So sectoral reporting, this is a recent thing we've integrated into our third-party tool set. So this is drawn directly off CTI. So Emma made a couple of key points, and we'll kind of come back and reiterate it about unique data. Understand this is coming from unique data off of deep and dark web. This one is aligned to industry, region, et cetera. So you can get kind of that big picture view of what might be affecting your supply chain regionally or within industry verticals. Then, as I mentioned before, I think our what I'd call our flagship, or kind of the core of this first step into the Bitsight platform on the TPRM side, is what we're calling breach intelligence. So I mentioned earlier that we've had a lot of publicly disclosed breach information in the Bitsight platform. This is now bringing in that CTI threat intelligence, breach, even some pre-breach chatter. So this could be mentions of particular companies. This could be mentions of sector focus. Obviously, this type of intelligence also relates to threat actors. So, a workflow that we see our customers using this is, if you find some intelligence relative to this, understand what the threat insight is on it. And then when you go into threat insights in Bitsight, it will talk about the APTs, like Emma was pointing out, some of their typical tactics and procedures, TTPs they're called. And you can really start to drill in to help to prioritize again, if you have a lot of findings across this vast supply chain, which of the ones are most critical, and what might you prioritize. So we're hoping breach intelligence is going to be a major assistant with that effort.
Yeah.
And then back to this point, Emma. Yeah, it's a great point here.
Yeah, one of the things is the importance of the data that you actually have to prevent an attack. We want to be proactive rather than reactive. So if we see a threat actor talking about our vendor, we want to be able to fix that and prevent them from actually getting into our vendor, where it would end up being a reactive approach. So OSINT, open source intelligence, stuff that you can Google, that you can find on the ClearNet, is great information. But a lot of times you want the information that's behind the closed doors that you can't just find on Google. That's going to give you the real details of what threat actors are thinking, what IOCs they're using. Are they coming from a malicious IP? Are they trying to do brute force? Are they looking at phishing? What is their tactic that they're trying to leverage for these attacks? So we are in some closed forums and dark web chat rooms where we can actually watch these threat actors, see what they're discussing and who they're planning on targeting next. We do real-time adversary discussions. A lot of these threat actors love to talk about what they're doing, what they're planning, what their end goal is. So being able to track that and be able to have that intelligence is going to be huge in preventing an attack. This will help you validate, is this important information that could prevent an attack? Or if there is an active attack on my vendor, what information do they need that can possibly help this? One of the recent things, like I said, with Light LLM, we were able to see that Team PCP had 100% change in activity. Their activity trend versus same threat actor group or similar threat actor groups went up by 300%, and their activity trend versus all overall adversaries went up by 100%. or 300%, sorry. So being able to see that and see, okay, this group is active. They're not in hibernation. They're actively targeting these. I need to watch this group closely. I need to see which vendors they're going after, which industries they're going after, and make sure not only my vendors are protected, but that they're also protecting my information as well. So this will give you the better prioritization when you don't have much time to act. If you see that a 0-day came out and you know that your vendor uses it, that program or software, being able to stop it before they actually get in through that 0 day is going to be huge.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing up these kind of incidents in real time. It's very interesting for me, and it also highlights the fact of just the evolving nature of the attack landscape, APTs, et cetera. I mean, it's always moving. So again, it's not an easy thing we're asking for here. We're kind of, we'd love to partner with you on, like, if you think this type of maturity is where you want to go, to kind of workshop with you. Because I think it's important. I mean, I intend to be part of risk and compliance and third-party risk for many years. So I really like to see the evolving of the sector. And when I have discussions, sometimes they hear people like Emma talk, and they're like, "Whoa, that's too much," and we get that. So really, we're trying to refine it down to say, what are the important signals that you have to act on? So one specific thing, we haven't talked a ton, I mean, Emma has referenced vulnerabilities, but one aspect that we're trying to bring to bear in the platform is something we call our dynamic vulnerability exploit score. So on this topic of prioritizing, if you are weeding through this various different threat intel we're giving you and coming up to a set of vulnerabilities, this should be really helpful. This is a prioritization coming directly off that threat intel information Emma was mentioning, that is looking at the exploitability of a vulnerability within the next 90 days. So if you come up against one of these and you identify, is it on typical lists like the CISA-KEV list, and then you want more prioritization, our platform helps with an additional level of prioritization there to say, could one vulnerability be more exploitable, essentially, or likely to be exploited than another. So that's another part of this dark web for supply chains that we've rolled out. Okay, so just to come back, we talked about Oracle. Well, Emma talked about Oracle, and I might have commented once or twice, but just to kind of tie this together. So if you think about our platform, what you're really talking about, what we are showing is absolutely already in the platform. I see one of our folks asking about that. I'm sorry if I haven't been following all, but yes, everything we are showing is in the platform today. This is not forthcoming. This is what we have today. And so we're really eager to get people's input on what we have out there. So to kind of bring it back to the Oracle case. So Emma went through details of that, some interesting aspects of Oracle, obviously a huge supply chain partner for many organizations, but also just the changing nature of what happened there. There was a vulnerability that was kind of like, it's a bad way of putting it, but I'm a GRC person, re-vulnerable. It was vulnerable again. So in our platform, you can look across the supply chain and say, what is my exposure? Because again, you may need to answer this question from either the board or upper management about, does this affect us? Does this affect our supply chain? Then, what can you learn from threat intel? So we're trying to pull that in with things like breach intelligence, threat insights, and then, dig down into the incident details. So this could be things like, was there a campaign aligned with this? Were there APT groups, et cetera? And then if it comes to, in this case, it did come down to a specific vulnerability. Actually, a few vulnerabilities, I think, Emma, or was this really like one vulnerability in this case, do you think?
The one was from August to October 4th, and then another one appeared October 11th.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was a couple. So if these screenshots aren't that easy to go through, but again, we can demo this for you, because you can do a text search across our vulnerabilities, like I did here with Oracle, and it'll come up with multiple vulnerabilities related to it. So again, we hope this will be helpful with your teams to kind of hone in on, okay, what are the things we might need to look at, in this case, in our supply chain, because of different events and incidents like this. Okay, bringing it home, and then we'll have some time at the end to maybe go through some questions with our last 10 minutes. So kind of to bring it all together, this is just a big picture slide. There's a lot of teams at play here. We're hoping that dark web intelligence will start to become sort of the glue between, especially between the TPRM and the CTI and SOC teams. Talked a lot about, those two different teams, and, Emma's kind of the CTI SOC team. I'm kind of the GRC team. In your own environments, I think those groups talking together. I mean, Emma and I, we can talk together. I don't fully understand her all the time, but we can talk. So kind of a sort of a reflection on the conversations that I know are ongoing in some, but need to happen even more so. And then I will just call out, we didn't talk a lot about the front end of the process, but there is this whole governance layer. A lot of times it even begins with procurement and other kind of vendor management. So make sure you're also incurring those groups into these conversations, so that it becomes really collaborative across the entire organization. And then lastly, just to come back to this concept of resiliency, because we've referenced it a number of times, but just to kind of, Chung Lu opened with this concept, and just to kind of put the period on the sentence here. So for me, if you think about what security programs have been about, and now TPRM as part of them, is for a number of years, people were chasing this sort of notion of perfect protection. And I believe really organizations are getting away from that. It's particularly true of TPRM, where perfect protection is not really the goal anymore. Incidents are nearly inevitable. I'd say maybe your organization directly could be lucky enough to avoid them, but within your supply chain, it's inevitable. And you're dependent on those supply chain. So really, those supply chain partners, rather. So really some kind of key things to think about as you really think about resilience is, it's about prioritization. So if something's going to happen, what are the data and metrics that help you to prioritize, maybe making one action or remediation over another? It's contextual. So Emma, her points about understanding your adversaries, understanding how they act, what are their tactics, et cetera, really important to have that context. And then ultimately, hopefully it will result in faster decision making, because in this case, if you are really thinking resiliency, you're talking about events will happen, let's say, and in the face of that and the need to recover or remediate, having that context needed to be able to make decisions really, really quickly. So that's kind of my, I think what I'd love us to kind of take as the big picture on this. Emma, any last question? Any last maybe comments or thoughts from you before we go to questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, once again, the data that you have during either an active attack or during a 0-day is going to help you so much. So if you have strong data where you're able to actually track what threat actors are discussing, it's going to be immensely helpful to help prevent either a vendor getting breached or you getting breached as well.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Awesome. Are we ready for Q&A?
I think we are.
What about, so I addressed some of those questions in the Q&A already, in terms of some of the exciting features where they are currently in continuous monitoring, our flagship product on the TPRM side, and it's at no additional cost for you. So I really hope you leverage it. I think Evan called it out as well. Let's take questions. This one is from Karin. For organizations with thousands of fourth-party dependencies, how do you think we should leverage the breach intel, identify hidden systemic risk before it becomes a headline?
Yeah. Okay. So here's someone already saying fourth party, even beyond third party. So it's not hard enough to address third parties. But yeah, let's talk about it. So when I hear people talk about fourth party versus third party, to me, it quickly becomes a conversation about the supply chain, and the disruption and concentration within the supply chain is really what I think we're talking about in that case. So what I see organizations thinking about relative to that is, third-party, you may have thousands of already third-party partners, and then as soon as you expand to fourth-party, it's probably thought of as like an impossibility to like think about assessing. So I don't think anyone's thinking about assessing that level. They're thinking about where are the concentration risks, where the big disruption events, as Emma was talking about, those are going to matter across that fourth-party area there as well. Just as another aspect we didn't talk about today, but Bitsight data also helps to support that fourth-party mission, because we can identify the relationships across third and fourth parties to give you that, at least that visibility to say what do we want to act on, and how do we determine these sort of concentration risks. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, Emma.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. Any other questions, Junglu?
Oh, we have a lot. Next one is from Susanna, and I think maybe this is for you both, for like sort of the actionable intel that lives in closed forums or Telegram channels. How does Bitsight ensure it's validated before it triggers a high severity alert for the vendors?
Do you want to take that first, Emma, and I'll jump in, or do you want me? Okay.
Yeah, so threat actors are generally younger groups of people who do have a lot of chatter and a lot of talking to each other and saying things to each other, so it can be hard to like sift through all that. We do make sure that we're actually validating that it is the group's active channel. If you know anything about dark web, they either are constantly changing URLs or are constantly changing channels to prevent any feds from getting in and watching them. So it's a matter of making sure we have the correct URL, we're on the correct Telegram page, we're actively making sure it is ScatterSpider associated with this group, and then seeing, okay, they've talked about this. Is this an active thing that they can actually exploit? Is this a possible thing, or is it just them kind of talking about if it was a perfect world and they could exploit this? So it's making sure that if they're talking about like Oracle, that's an actual thing that they can get into, and just validating those threats.
Yep. Yeah, and I will say it's a great question, because there are these always reputable sources? No, and we're quite aware of that. So what we allow you to do is to really drill back down to where the source is coming from. But we do treat this data differently. So again, if you're thinking of us historically as, a cybersecurity ratings provider, which we are well beyond that, these types of things we don't incur into cybersecurity ratings, because we think this kind of threat intel, needs to be actioned in different ways by different organizations. So we don't treat it the same way as some of the more validated data that we have in our other data sets.
We got, let's see, we got a questions about DVE score. I think this is also from Susanna. How does the DVE score specifically help a non-technical GRC manager?
Yeah.
Explain to the vendor when a patch is very urgent versus just critical on paper, and critical is quote unquote.
Yeah. That's a great question. So what the DVE is a dynamic vulnerability exploit. So it is taking real-time signals we have from Bitsight CTI and computing a score from 0 to 10 of the exploitability of it. You'll also see in the platform that it will tell you the criteria by which we're ranking it 0 to 10. So is it a particular POC kit out there? Has it been exploited? References to APTs and things. Sorry, advanced persistent threat. I know I've used that a couple times. Think of that as just adversaries. Emma was talking generally about adversaries. These kinds of inputs feed into that DVE score. So we're hoping how that would be useful to a non-technical audience is by putting it in something like a 0 to 10 score, and then to allow it to be the ability to kind of prioritize some of those over other things based upon their immediate exploitability.
Yeah. One of the crazy things we are seeing with CVEs in terms of third-party vendors and DVE scores is some of the CVEs that are highly ranked on a scale of 1 to 10 and have like a score of 9 or 10 are CVEs that are over 20 years old that vendors just never end up patching. We do have a blog about that, but being able to track some of these old ones and making sure your vendors don't have a 2-decade-old CVE that they just never ended up patching.
Yeah, good point. Maybe one more, Chunglu, or we're getting close now, yeah?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more. I think the resiliency mandate questions or topics start resonating, but and I'm reframing this question. So basically, the question is like, okay, what's like the very first step? We talk about like all the good things that could happen, but what's like a very first step to make it happen from a GRC and TPRM perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a big question, though. So I think for me, when I see these working well, it is because the organization is aligned across these various different groups that we're talking about getting aligned, because you have to have kind of a shared mentality in mind to move to resilience. So that, again, is not going to be easy because you're going to have teams that are entrenched in doing things a certain way. So we don't mean to be portraying any of this as easy. I just do think it's necessary, and I do think you'll have industry forces telling you that resilience is really the future for cybersecurity. I mean, I've been in cybersecurity, I wouldn't even say how long, but I think this, as a utopian goal, this idea of resiliency has been out there for a very long time. It's not a new concept. I think it's just catching hold that because of the inevitability, we better just really be prepared for resilience.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I think we're almost on time. Any last word for the webinar before we wrap up, Evan and Emma?
Well, I appreciate everyone joining, and hopefully we've given you things to think about. And if you want to drill in on any of the aspects that we went through, all of it is available today, just to reiterate the answer to that question, and we would love to work with you on it.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks again. And then know that we have more questions that we hear from you. We'll make sure to follow up, as well as making sure that you leverage the resource that's on the doc tab. This will wrap up in a minute. And we'll have a follow-up email. So in about a month or so, we'll have the next webinar, which is super exciting. So make sure that you follow that, and we'll see you in a month. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.